Okay, so a very big warm welcome tonight at the British Music Experience for a very intimate evening with Creation Records legend Mr. Alan McGee. That was right on cue. Fantastic, thank you very much. So I hope you all enjoyed the documentary. Danny's here tonight, who directed it. And so Alan, obviously I've known you a few years, but I never really asked you about when you left Glasgow, didn't you? You left home at 16, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Govan Hill, which I don't know if anybody knows Glasgow, but that's kind of like just down from Mount Florida. And at about 5, we moved up to Mount Florida. I started going to school, and then I ended up going to King's Park School, where I met Bobby and Throb, and Jim Beattie. It was originally in Primal Scream. Andrew for Primal Scream went to another school completely, and that was kind of like, we were just, as I was leaving school at 16, punk was starting to happen, and I started going to the gigs. I'd been going to concerts from probably 1971, since I was about 10. And I was going to see T-Rex, Slade, Bowie, Sweet. And then I started getting into, by 75, 76, I was going to see things like Queen, because I was just going to see any gigs that would happen by that point. But when punk came along, it blew my mind. And that was the big change, do you know what I mean? You know, that I started going, and I went to all the gigs, all the punk gigs, and that was the huge. I'd always wanted to play an instrument, and I could play a little bit, but then I heard the Ramones, and I could actually play their songs. So, you know, punk, it made everything possible, to be honest. I say, I've got this theory that anybody is my age, and I'm like 58, so anybody maybe down to about 40, I think the only reason that people like us have managed to, a lot is a break through the class system, is that punk rock opened that up. That's what I actually believe. Because now I think for young people to break through the class system is really fucking difficult. But back in the 70s, that generation of punk, I saw recently, at a lunch with Julian Cope, and we were talking about it. And Julian said the same thing to me. He went, we're products of the punk thing, because we would never have got through if punk rock hadn't happened. Do you know what I mean? He goes, he'd have been a teacher, he thought, but he says he's now a rock and roll teacher, speaking about kind of prehistoric stones, standing stones. And I went, well, I would have been a taxi driver or a bus driver, do you know what I mean? You know, and I think I would have been, do you know what I mean? But punk changed it, that it broke the class system down. I don't know if anybody agrees with that, but I think if you're my age and you've been through that, I think it's much more difficult for kids now. Do you know what I mean? I think if you're working class for Glasgow or Liverpool, London even, you know what I mean? You know, I think, you know, much more difficult to break through.
So if you can tell me a little secret, and probably everybody else in the room, about the first band that you formed in your bedroom. Your first gig was in the bedroom at home, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I joined this band, Andrew Innes's band. By that time I was 17, and this would be 78, and I joined his band, and he came on the Brian Ford show. It was the punk show, and it was the Drains are looking for a bass player. So I joined Andrew's band, and then the band, of course, back in the day, these early days of punk, when you were like 16, 17, you know, the bands never got out the bedroom, and you know, that morphed into another band called Captain Scarlet and the Mistrons, and the lineup was Bobby Gillespie was singing, and he would roll about the floor. And in retrospect, it reminded me of Iggy Pop, but he at the time was genuinely trying to be Jimmy Pursey. Do you know what I mean? So he was like, he was rolling about, and the guitar player was Andrew Innes, and then I was a bass player. So that was kind of the beginning of the whole Primals and Creation, yeah.
Yeah, so at 16 you left home.
Well, I got thrown out, as it goes, you know, by my old man. But yeah, I think that was, I mean, you can look at it a few ways and go, well, that was kind of like, it wasn't cool, but equally, it kind of made me grow up really fast because, you know, I mean, I had to fend for myself.
And so you went to work on the railway, didn't you? What age was that when you...
I got that job when I was about 17 or 18. It was a really dreadful, boring job. I don't think you can get jobs like that anymore. It was like, no, I don't mean, I know you can get dreadful, boring jobs, but you have to work. I didn't do any work.
What did you do then?
Did
you sell the sandwiches?
I avoided work. No, they used to give me the paperwork for the store, and I used to put it in my bag, and then I'd walk along the road to Liverpool. Well, no, it wasn't even Liverpool Street. That was when I came down to London. I'd walk along and just put it in the bin. And I got away with it for like 2 years before they sussed me out.
So this is for email, obviously, you know.
Yeah, no.
Fax
It was
machines.
like, I was supposed to be doing the filing or whatever I was supposed to be doing. I just used to bin it.
So what happened then? What did you do
After
that?
2 years, they got pissed off when we'd been in the stuff. But I moved to London by that point.
Okay, so what did you do in London?
Then I moved down when I was 19 because I was going to get thrown out of the band by Andrew Innes. Me and Andrew were in this band. By that point, it had become Newspeak. And we came down with a singer called Jack Riley. And he couldn't keep up with it, if you know what I'm saying. He wasn't, London intimidated Jack, so he went back to, I think it was somewhat Gourock he lived or something like that. And it was just me and Andrew. We changed the band again to the Laughing Apple, and we started making records. And Andrew came to London. I came to London at 19, which is incredibly young, but Andrew was 17 when he came to London. So we were both really, really young guys.
So you were mainly concentrating in being in a kind of a punk band than management then at that time?
No, I sort of by default found out I was good at making records and managing bands and doing PR, but I didn't realise, I only done it for my own band because nobody else would do it for me. So we put out 3 independent singles as a Laughing Apple. So I learned to master, to produce the records, press the records up, get the sleeves done, get the labels done, all that stuff, put them in the poly bag, did a distribution deal with Rough Trade. And then I put out the 3 singles, and John Peel played them a few times, but it was great. It blew your mind when you would hear yourself on John Peel. It was fantastic. But at that point, I suddenly realised, maybe when I was about 21, that I knew how to do the whole thing, because through necessity I'd learned to make records.
So that was like the defining moment for you?
Well, I decided I was going to start a little label because I had a club going at this point called The Living Room, and I was putting on like Nightingales, 3 Johns, TV personalities, Pastels, Nicky Sudden, Loft, Primal Scream, Jesus and Mary Chain. I was putting on all these bands. So I was making money. I was only about 22, 23. By this point, it was 1983 in London. And maybe the size of this times 2, the stage to the wall, maybe make it again a bit further, and we'd put gigs on in a small space. So it's kind of effectively like a rehearsal room space, but we'd put 200 people in or 150 people in. We were making money, and that funded all the early 7-inch single releases.
So how was that born then? How did the idea come about to set it up?
Just because I knew how to do the records, because it's like I'd learned it with my own band, so I thought I may as well put other people's records out. And then I had the club, and the club was making me money. And then I was meeting all these bands like Mary Chain, Pastels, Primal Scream, blah, blah, blah. So I just started putting the records out. I put my friends' records out, and it blew up. I was always a fanzine kid that ran a record label, and it just so happens that I was really good at running a record label and became big. But in my head, for years after it, I was always just a fanzine kid that ran a label. In my head.
So when did you actually set Creation up? Whereabouts did you set
it up? We got it. We got it. I can't remember what it's called, but we got the limited company in about 1983. Halfway through 1983, probably about August 1983. So I'd be 22.
So were you out actively looking for bands all the time?
Well, they would find me, to be honest. It's a bit like, because I had this little club, and I could get so many great bands through running the club. And at that point, it doesn't sound that revolutionary an idea, having a little club, but nobody was really doing that kind of indie music, if you know what I'm saying, in London, because there wasn't that many people would come and see it. It was only 200 or 300 people. So no real promoter was interested in in doing that. So I just ended up putting these bands on and putting the records out.
So your first biggest band would have been Jesus and Mary Chain, would it?
Yeah. But that was the first one that broke. Do you know what I mean? You know, and I ended up being their manager, and it was a heady ascent, really, to be honest, because within a year, I was managing them at 23, and I got them a big publishing deal and stuff like that, and we went on tour, and there was riots at the gigs and all that stuff. But within a year, I was in the west coast of America, because they got big in America really fast, like within a year. And we'd be doing like Universal Amphitheatre. By the time I wasn't even 24, and there was like 4,000 people in LA, 4,000 people in New York. Do you know what I mean? So it was a baptism of fire, really, to be honest. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what kind of music were you listening to around that time yourself?
Just Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd, as in Pink when they were good, TV personalities, Buzzcocks, stuff like that.
But were you still in the band, though?
Was that?
Were you still in the band?
In a kind of, the band had morphed into a band called Biff Bang Pow.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just, I mean, we'd actually, by that point, started to make quite good records. Do you know what I mean? We were okay. But my whole focus was the record label.
Yeah. And then the famous day when you went up to the King's Tuts in...
Well, that was, if you want me to jump, that was like 1993.
Yeah.
You know, but I think I think with, you know, once we got the whole thing going with Creation, you know, in the very early days, you know, we had like, say, 1984, 1985, we were incredibly cool, and I was really young.
I know, I read that people at Creation said the people that worked at Creation were more rock and roll than the artists that they actually had on the label.
Well, I mean, it goes through different phases. By the time we were all in the 90s, that was probably true.
It seemed a good place to be at the office.
Yeah, we were crazy at one point.
You had lots of parties.
But in the beginning, I don't think I was at all. I was pretty. I used to have 2 beers. I wasn't really interested in the very beginning. Do you know what I mean? And by the time it got to 1987, that was a dismal year, really, to be honest. And you know, by that point, the music papers had decided that, you know, we were a bunch of retro bastards. So do you know what I mean? You know, so, you know, we couldn't do anything right at that point. Whereas the previous couple of years, we couldn't have done anything wrong. And by the looks of everybody here, they actually do remember the music papers. But do you remember when they had actual control over music? Do you know what I mean? Whereas now, if you got a bad review in NME or even online, really, it doesn't matter because nobody cares.
No, it definitely had a bit edge, didn't it, to it? And
no. Yeah. So then, from 1987. We merged into about 1988, and like we'd managed to stay afloat. And then I had like 12 grand left in the bank because my first wife had decided I was a reprobate, and
why was that then?
You don't have all night, dude, right? But she decided I was a reprobate, so she'd sacked me, right? And as these things happen, right? And
why are you looking at me like that for?
It's funny. So and then I had 12 grand left, and I disbanded House of Love, and they'd done this mix of the first album. I'd built it up with a few singles, but this is before Christine came out, and they'd done the mixes, and they were trying to be the Mary Chain because bands are crazy, and they'd submerged the vocals totally in the mix. You couldn't really hear Guy Chadwick's brilliant songs. And with the last 12 grand, I hired Pat Collier to mix the first House of Love album. And I thought, fuck it, man. I was like, this is all the money in the world I've got. This could be the end of everything, and I'm just going to have to go and get a real job. And it blew up. Do you know what I mean? You know, so that was the first of a few times when Creation, everybody thought, it's fucking over, man. And it blew up. And I think that record sold 400,000 or 500,000. It's great.
And what other bands were you concentrating on?
Well, that was the beginning of a turnaround because it started happening for me around that point. You know, I started managing the House of Love, I signed them to a big label. No, I didn't even want them to leave Creation. There was the most stupid thing they ever done with their career was to leave, because we were about to get absolutely fucking massive, and but hindsight's easy to say. But they should never have left. But yeah, I found the Valentines around that time, And they put their record out by the end of that year, and that had blown up. So I'd broke, that 1988, I'd broke 2 bands. I'd broke House of Love and I broke My Bloody Valentine. They were both really high, everywhere, all over the world, huge alternative bands, you know. And then 89, I started making Loveless, the My Bloody Valentine record. And that was a painful year. Great year for acid house, to be honest. So I didn't probably feel the pain that much. But it was like, you know, it was a good year for creation. You know, not a good year for creation, good year for Alan McGee, but not that good year for creation. And then it got to 1990, and then that's when Loaded happened. Yeah. And then the world became Technicolor. Yeah, and then we had Ride, we had St Etienne, which Boo Radley's, we had Swerve Driver, Slow Dive, you know, a load of bands.
Yeah. A lot of those bands are still big, aren't they now? Like Ride, they're back
out.
When
I was watching that documentary there, and you know, that's the thing that kind of did make me go. Do you know what I mean? You know, there's a lot of these bands that are like, you know, still around. I mean, Slow Dive's one of the ones that really make me go, that was great. Because see, when they broke up, they couldn't get arrested. You know, I mean, they broke up about 95, 96, and that was at the height of Britpop. And Slow Dive, I put out 3 or 4 albums by them. I think I put out 4 albums, and you couldn't give away that last album. If I had went, we did a little one of these little kind of album launch things we'd get into by that point for Slow Dive, and it was free beer, and we were finding it hard to give away free beer. Do you know what I mean? Because it was Slow Dive. It was like, and then they came back 2014, and you know they ended up like, you know, headlining Primavera and all the festivals.
I know some people will ask me, is it a nostalgia thing, or do you think there is a need for this kind of music at the moment?
Well, I don't think Slow Dive are nostalgia, because they just put a new album out and it's better than any of the other albums they've ever put out. So I you know, and I'm not their manager. I'm just like, you know, I like their music, but you know, so they're definitely not nostalgia. Do you know what I mean? You know, I don't think it is nostalgia with them at all. I think they're young though, because they were really young when I signed them.
Well, Ride weren't they?
They were young, but Slow Dive were even younger. Yeah, I think Slow Dive now are about 45. Yeah. So back in the day, they were only about 18 when I signed them.
So where did you find you were going with the next?
Well, once we get into the acid house thing, we just kept. At that point, we had Screamadelica. We had Loveless, we had Bandwagon-esque, all massive albums in America and Britain, all done great. And then at the end of it, we were still nearly bankrupt. Do you know what I mean? Because you know, Kevin Shields had managed to rack up 270 grand worth of. Well, I did get my money back as it goes, but we'd spent 270 on recording it. So it was like money in, maybe off a Primal Scream, money out with My Bloody Valentine. It was kind of one of these moments. And then we owed about $1 million one day. Somebody dragged me into the creation accountant, Brendan, who wasn't really an accountant. He just called himself an accountant, right? Kid story of my life, right? And he goes, "Oh, Alan, come on in, you know, have a look at the figures." He's Irish. And he goes,
that was the best Irish accent by a Glaswegian I think I've heard.
"You owe 1.2 million. I was like, "Fuck, it's a Sunday, Brendan, fuck off." You know what I mean? But anyway, it's like, but, you know, we did, and I had to go and do a deal. So Sony had always tried to buy us. They'd been asking for about 2 years. Yeah. So then I did a deal with Sony, and, you know, arguably I didn't really have a choice.
I know, they were kind of a bit of a lifeline in a way, weren't they, to keep creation going?
They kept it going. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I would have been able to keep it going. No, because you know, I don't come from family wealth or anything like that. We owed £1 million, you know.
How did a lot of the bands feel about having to sign over to them, like Primal
the bands
Scream
were okay.
And stuff?
Weirdly, the bands were okay about it. I think maybe it was so haphazard. They thought it's going to be okay now. Do you know what I mean? You know.
But what was it like for you, being like a big music maverick, steering the way for all this, and then having to have meetings with like executives from Sony? That must have been pretty hard work.
The first couple of years, Rob, it wasn't really hard work. I was the one that was hard work, because I was out of my mind, and they were like, I would just go in and go, "I need another $500,000," because they used to give me the cash flow money, and I was always taking them for money. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it was a bit like they were just. I think I was just I mean, I was on drugs, people, so that's really, why I was kind of behaving so erratically. But I don't think it was Sony was the problem. I think me being mental was probably a big problem to them. Do you know what I mean?
But they did have the equity and the peace of mind of having Oasis, though, didn't they?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was great. I mean, obviously, it would have been the ideal world, signing our version of, our generation's version of Zeppelin, and you owned the whole company. But, I didn't have that extra million to fund it myself, so we done a deal with Sony. But it worked out at the end of the day, you know what I mean?
So how did it change things for you? Because obviously you had a lot of freedom before, didn't you, with creation?
Well, the main thing that was the main difference was the deals changed from, we were doing 50-50 artist splits. So after the cost, you're the artist, you get 50%, I'm the record company, I get 50%. And then it changed away to deals. I remember when we put out the Sugar album in 1992, and I think somebody worked it out that for every Sugar album sold, I'd make £3 or £4, and Bob Mould would make 60 or 70 pence, something like that. And at that point, because I come from a background that I think you should always split it. Do you know what I mean? That's where I come from. So, and we were based on Factory Records, Tony Wilson. So, 50-50 deals. That was what Creation had got there on. And then we had our first really big album, which was Sugar. And suddenly we were making like £3 or £4 a copy, you know what I mean?
And with the big heyday of Britpop, you actually missed it, didn't you? Because you had a little break while all that was going on, didn't you?
We're not there yet, but I'll get you there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just, I'd partied for 6 or 7 years, as it said in the film, went crazy, ended up...
That was before they invented apple cider vinegar, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. If we had that, I'd have been all right.
You'd have been all right, wouldn't you?
But...
and social media. I mean, could you imagine now what
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
have been like with, Oasis having Twitter on the phone after
Yeah, I
Liam
mean,
had 4 of his teeth
you
knocked
could look
out
at
and
it.
then
You could look at
tweeting
it. You
on
could
there.
look at another way. Could you imagine social media and Oasis being Oasis
They'd
with
be
social media?
It would have been even mental,
It'd have
wouldn't
been
it?
bigger than it'd have been bigger than it was.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I really agree with you with that one.
Yeah.
Liam would have been putting some very interesting things on there, wouldn't he?
Yeah. But what we had to do back in the day was because Liam was really he's not like Liam now. Liam back in the day was absolutely untutored and he just said anything to anybody. And me and Noel Marcus went. Noel does the interviews.
Do you all want to hear a good story of Liam then? They want to hear one of your crazy stories then?
Oh, right, I'm supposed to tell it. Right, I thought you were going to tell me one.
No, I can't tell any. No.
Right.
I'll be barred
Get
from
there,
Pretty Green if I tell.
get there,
I'll be
I'm sure
barred
we'll
from
get
Pretty Green if I tell any.
Yeah. No, but I think Liam, we kind of very early on in that whole thing, we kept Liam away from the interviews because we would have said anything at that point, do you know what I mean? And we kind of realised it's going to be really big. We didn't think it was going to be as big as that, but we knew it was going to do well. So we kind of we directed a lot of the press to know.
But they had some very good mentoring, didn't they, with the real people?
They did.
I think we're lucky to
No,
have
but this
Chris
real
here this
story of the
evening.
real people is I don't think they're giving them enough credit.
I don't think
be
so
honest,
either, no.
because
a lot of people don't know Alan, though.
But I'll explain it. It's because before I really got involved with it, the real people had basically taught Noel to arrange songs. Do you know what I mean?
It used to be about 14 minutes long, didn't they?
The way that Mick Ronson would kind of do it for Bowie, the real people sort of showed Noel how to do that. And that was a massive part of the whole thing. And also, I went to see real people about a month ago in London, and my 2 friends were going, yeah, but they're just like Oasis. And I'm like, no, Oasis stole the style of that. I mean, they made it their own, but that's where they took it. Do you know what I mean?
I saw them at Star Shape Festival at Brixton a month or so ago, and they were awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
Really good.
They're these, I mean, history sometimes, it doesn't acknowledge people actually done stuff, but they
Well, it means a lot to us fans for you to acknowledge that as well, so that's great.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
And it got to... The Oasis thing started blowing up. What's interesting is in that film and in others, Noel's memory for when everything happened is slightly off. I was in rehab, but it wasn't Morning Glory. It was fucking definitely Maybe. Because I made the record, went into rehab, came out, November and then carried on. Do you know what I mean? But he thinks I went off in Morning Glory, so whatever, man. But yeah, that just blew up. The first 3 years of Oasis, or 4 years, was just insane. It was like being in charge of a jet plane. It was mad. Do you know what I mean? You know, and in '93 we signed them. '94 put Definitely Maybe out. '95 put out Morning Glory. '96 they arguably were the biggest band in the world. '97 Be Here Now. And up to about '98, you know what I mean, it was still pretty mad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it must have been crazy. What did it feel like to actually have them with you?
It was surreal, but I was
ultimately,
I was a peripheral figure really to, other than signing them. They're quite remarkable people, the Gallaghers, because I remember speaking to Kevin Rowland about them once, and he was going, Kevin Rowland had Tour IA, smashed it in America, smashed it in England, and then went on drugs because he couldn't deal with it. And that's kind of the story of so many big stars. They get so big, and then they're like, fuck this, man, I'm taking the drugs, you know, I don't want to deal with it. And Oasis they got big, and they never really did that, do you know what I mean? They just, you know, there was a time that I think they just soaked it up to the point it was no more, they couldn't really take it anymore. But they never fell into the drug trap. Yeah,
but whatever happened, they did stay together for quite a long time, where a lot of bands did have a few records and they just split for some reason. Is there any... What do you think that kept them going that long?
I think... I really don't know.
I know they had like differences and stuff, but
well, yeah, I mean,
with everything that they had, they stayed together quite a long time, didn't they? Where a lot of bands,
maybe it's just their Irish background, to be honest. You know what I mean? Because there's a kind of hardiness to them that a lot of other musicians don't really have. Do you know what I mean? You know that. I've worked with so many people that, you know, they self-destruct at a certain point. Do you know what I mean? You know.
Yeah. Okay, so I think you guys have been really patient now, so we're going to put some questions out to you now for Alan.